What must I do to inherit eternal life? That is the question posed to Jesus by this scholar of the law. And in typical fashion, Jesus does not respond with a direct answer, but rather responds to the scholar with two questions of his own. What is written in the law, and how do you read it? The scholar quoted two verses, one from the book of Deuteronomy and one from the book of Leviticus. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Jesus replies, you have answered correctly. Do this, and you shall live. But that wasn't enough for the scholar. He wanted more detail, and so he asked another question. And who is my neighbor? I don't think he was expecting the answer that Jesus was about to give. For Jesus shares with him and those around him and with us tonight a parable, a story about a man on his way from Jerusalem to Jericho, about a 25-mile trip, who during that trip fell in and became a victim to robbers. They stripped him, beat him, and left him off half dead. A priest of the temple travels down that same road. He sees the person lying by the roadside. He feels sorry for him. His compassion is from a distance. He's on his way to Jerusalem, perhaps to perform some task at the temple. He's got a schedule he's got to keep. And if he goes over there and touches this person, and that person is dead, then he becomes ritually unclean, which means he can't do anything in the temple for 7 days. So the priest let his fear, his schedule, and his plans dictate what he would do. He crossed on the other side and continued on to Jerusalem. The next person to come by is a Levite. We might call, in today's language, a sacristan. They were there to help the priest at the temple. And this Levite also sees the person lying there by the roadside. Now, if he happened to touch the person was dead, he would not be ritually unclean. That was just for the priest. But he also had a schedule. He also had plans. And maybe it was a ploy. Maybe he really wasn't hurt. Maybe he was just waiting for some sucker to come by and then he can become the victim. Or maybe there was somebody else around waiting for him to do something good, and so the Levite, out of his fear, out of his plan, out of his schedule, decided, my compassion will be from a distance, and he heads on to Jerusalem. The third person to arrive is a Samaritan. A what? A Samaritan? They shouldn't be in the story. They're the enemy. They're heretics. We don't like them. What's he doing in the story? The Samaritan, recognizing that he's in foreign territory, is concerned about his own vulnerability. The fact that he could also be attacked by anybody and everybody. And so when he comes upon the person there in the ditch, he's moved with compassion. Compassio, to suffer with. He's somehow connected with that person lying there by the roadside, bleeding, hurting, feeling like a nobody. And his compassion made him see not a victim, but a brother. And his compassion was so intense that it was motivating, it moved him to action. He realized what he had. He had some oil, he had some wine, he had a donkey, and he had some money. And he put them all at the service of the victim of the robber, to cleanse the wounds, to lift him on his donkey and take him to an inn where he cared for him. And this heretic, this enemy, this Samaritan, became the good one. As you and I listen to this story that Jesus told 2,000 years ago, we need to remember it's a story about something that happened not a long, long time ago, but it's a story that happens here and now. Every day, you and I have the possibility of encountering victims by the wayside. People beaten down, people hurting, people feeling like they're nobody and that nobody cares. We can encounter them within our families, in our neighborhood, amongst our friends, here in our parish, our community, our country, the world. All around us are people who are hurting, people beaten down, people abandoned. The question we need to ask ourselves today is, what will be our response? Will we be like the priest and the Levite? We feel sorry for them, but our compassion is from a distance. We've got plans. We've got schedules. We can come up with all sorts of excuses on why we at this time can't help them. And oftentimes, like the priest and the Levite, we go on our way. Or will our response be like that of the Samaritan? That when we see the other, whoever that other might be, however that other might be hurting or broken down or beaten, that we see in them not the victim, but our sister or our brother. And will our compassion for them, our ability to suffer with them be so intense, so great, that it will motivate us, that it will move us to action, that we will do something from whatever we have, our time, our talent, and our treasure, to bind up their wounds, to care for them, to heal them, to make them whole. Each and every day, you and I have the opportunity to be a good Samaritan. At this time, I now would like to invite Helena Moines of the Diocese of Charleston, South Carolina, who's going to share with us the missionary work that is done in the Fiji Islands.